The shuttle shook as it entered the atmosphere of Prime. Princess held her breath and looked out the window. After 12 years away, she was finally coming home. The violet clouds parted, and the crystal towers of her homeland appeared below. Everything looked exactly as she remembered. "Mommy, the sky is purple," shouted little Juno, pressing his small hands against the glass. He was only 4 years old, and everything amazed him. His older sister sat quietly beside him. At 7 years old, she understood more than her brother. She knew this trip was important. She knew her mother was nervous. Park reached over and took his wife's hand. He was a tall man with kind eyes and strong shoulders. Once, he had been a pilot in Earth's Defense Force. Now, he was about to meet his wife's alien family for the first time. "It will be okay," he said softly. Squeezed his hand but did not answer. She was not sure it would be okay at all. 12 years ago had been sent to Earth on a secret mission. The Empire wanted to study humans. They wanted to know if humans were worth making friends with, or if they should simply conquer Earth and take its resources. Was supposed to watch, learn, and report back. But then she met. She remembered that night clearly. A group of rogue soldiers had attacked her observation post. They wanted to capture her and sell her to enemy aliens. Had fought back, but there were too many of them. She thought she was going to die. Then a human pilot crashed through the window in a stolen military vehicle. He fought off the soldiers, took a bullet to the shoulder, and carried her to safety. When she asked why he risked his life for a stranger, he simply said, "Because you needed help." That was the moment fell in love with humanity, and with him. They married in secret, sent a message to her father saying she would not return. She chose Earth. She chose love over duty. For 12 years, she heard nothing from her family. She assumed they had forgotten her, or worse, that they hated her. Then 3 weeks ago, a message arrived. Her father, Emperor, commanded her to return home immediately. The Empire was at war with a terrible enemy called the Collective. The Empire needed allies. Earth's military power had impressed the galaxy, and the Emperor wanted to form an alliance. Knew she had no choice. If she refused, Earth might become an enemy instead of an ally. She had to go back. She had to face her family. And she had to bring her human husband and half-human children with her. The shuttle landed on a platform made of white crystal. Guards stood in perfect lines, their silver armor shining under the twin suns. Behind them, a crowd of nobles had gathered to watch the princess return. The door opened. Stepped out first, her head held high. She wore a simple blue dress instead of royal clothing. She wanted her family to see who she really was now. Followed, holding Juno in his arms. The little boy looked around with wide eyes at all the strange alien faces. Walked beside her father, her small hand gripping his jacket. The crowd went silent. Heard the whispers begin. The nobles stared at her children with shock and confusion. And Juno had their mother's silver-tinted skin, but they also had their father's dark hair and warm brown eyes. They looked like nothing they had ever seen before. "What are those creatures?" someone whispered. "Half-breeds," another voice hissed. "Disgusting." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had promised he would stay calm no matter what. The guards escorted them through long hallways made of crystal and light. Everything was beautiful and cold. Juno kept trying to touch the glowing walls and pulled him back each time. Finally, they reached the throne room. Emperor sat on a massive throne carved from a single black gemstone. He was tall and powerful, with sharp features and eyes like frozen stars. His silver hair fell past his shoulders. He looked ancient and terrifying. Beside him sat Empress. She was beautiful in a cold way, like a statue made of ice. Her face showed no emotion as she watched her daughter approach. Stopped before the throne and bowed her head. "Father, Mother, I have come as you commanded." The Emperor said nothing. His eyes moved from two, then to the children. His expression did not change. The silence stretched on and on. Juno started to squirm in his father's arms, held her breath. Then Empress stood up. She walked down the steps slowly, her long robes trailing behind her. She stopped in front of the children and stared at them. Looked up at the tall alien woman. She did not know what to say or do. She just stood there, trying to be brave like her father had taught her. His cold mask cracked. Her lips trembled. Her eyes grew wet with tears she had not shed in 12 years. "Are these," she whispered, her voice breaking, "are these my—" Felt tears running down her own face. "Yes, mother, this is Juno, your—" Reached out with a shaking hand and touched his cheek. The little girl did not pull away. She looked into her grandmother's eyes and saw something she recognized: sadness, loneliness, love. "Hello, grandmother," said in broken. Her mother had taught her a few words. Made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. She pulled into her arms and held her tight. Then she reached for Juno, who giggled and grabbed her silver hair. Emperor watched from his throne. His face was still like stone, but his eyes told a different story. He was looking at his like a man seeing the sun after years of darkness. In the shadows at the edge of the room, a figure watched the reunion with cold interest. High Advisor had served the Emperor for 300 years. He had guided the Empire through wars and disasters. He believed in the purity of the race above all else. And now here were these half-breed children, polluting the royal bloodline. Smiled a thin, cruel smile. He would not allow this contamination to continue. The human and his mongrel children would have to be removed, quietly, permanently. He turned and walked away, already planning. The war with the was coming, but there was another war beginning now, here in the palace, a war for the future of the empire. And the Park family was standing right in the middle of it. 1 week passed since the Park family arrived on Prime. It was the longest week of life. Every day brought new challenges. The nobles looked at him like he was an insect that had crawled into their palace. They spoke about him in their own language, thinking he could not understand, but had taught him enough to know what they were saying. Look at the human, so small, so weak. How long do they even live? 80 years, 90. He will be dead before finishes her morning routine. Why would a princess lower herself to mate with such a creature? Ignored most of it. He had faced worse during his years as a soldier. Words could not hurt him, but when they talked about his children, it was harder to stay calm. And Juno were struggling too. The other children in the palace avoided them. Some threw cruel words at them, pretended it did not bother her but saw her crying alone in her room at night. Juno was too young to understand the hate. He just wanted to play, but no one would play with him. One evening, the royal family held a formal dinner. All the important nobles were there. Wore the fancy clothes had given him, but he still felt out of place. Everyone else moved with grace and elegance. He felt like a clumsy bear among swans. The children sat between their parents, picked at her strange alien food quietly. Juno tried to eat something purple and made a face that showed he did not like the taste. A servant walked by with a tray of crystal glasses. Juno reached for one, curious about the pretty colors inside. His small hand bumped the tray, and a glass fell. Time seemed to slow down. Reached for the glass but knew he would not catch it in time. Then something strange happened. The glass stopped falling. It hung in the air, surrounded by a faint blue glow. Everyone stared. The room went completely silent. Little Juno was holding out his hand. His eyes were wide with surprise. He had stopped the glass with his mind. Gasped and covered her mouth. Telekinesis was a noble ability. Only those with royal blood could use it. Half-human children were not supposed to have this power. But Juno did. The glass floated gently back onto the tray. Juno looked at his hand like it belonged to someone else. "Did I do that, Mommy?" he asked. The nobles erupted in shocked whispers. Some looked angry, others looked afraid. A half-breed with noble powers went against everything they believed about blood purity. Then spoke, her voice small but steady, "I can do it too." She raised her hand, and her water cup lifted into the air. She had been hiding her ability for years, afraid of what people would think. Now, she decided she was done hiding. Emperor rose from his seat. The room went quiet again. Everyone waited to see what he would say. He looked at his for a long moment. Then he sat back down and picked up his fork. "The food is getting cold," he said calmly. "Eat." And that was all. The dinner continued. But saw the look that passed between and his wife. There was something in their eyes that was almost like pride. The next day, Prince came to find was younger brother. After left, he became next in line for the throne. He was tall and handsome and very proud. He did not like that his sister had returned. He especially did not like her human husband. "I challenge you to a combat trial," announced in front of a crowd of nobles, "unless humans are too cowardly to fight." Knew this was a trap, wanted to humiliate him, were stronger and faster than humans. A fair fight was impossible. But refusing would make things worse. The nobles would see him as weak. They would have even more reason to look down on his family. "I accept," said. The trial took place in a great arena. Hundreds of gathered to watch the human get destroyed. Sat in the royal box with the emperor and empress. Her face was pale with worry. And Juno watched from beside their mother, held her little brother's hand tightly. Entered the arena wearing light armor and carrying 2 curved blades. He moved like water, smooth and deadly. The crowd cheered for their prince. Entered wearing simple clothes and carrying a single straight sword. The crowd laughed. This would not even be a contest. The fight began. Attacked like lightning, his blades spinning in complex patterns. He expected the human to fall in seconds, but was not where expected him to be. Years of training had taught one important lesson: when you cannot win with strength, win with your mind. Had studied fighting styles his whole life. He had never faced a human soldier who fought dirty. Ducked under the first attack and threw sand into his eyes, while the prince stumbled back, kicked his knee and made him fall. When tried to rise, was already behind him with a blade at his throat. The crowd went silent. "Yield," said quietly. His face burned with shame, but he had no choice. "I yield." Stepped back and offered his hand to help stand. After a long moment, took it. The crowd did not cheer, but they did not laugh either. Something had changed. The human had earned a small piece of respect. That night, High Advisor came to his room. "You fought well today," said with a cold smile. "But surely you know you cannot keep this up. The court will never accept you. Your children will always be outsiders." Said nothing, he waited. "I am prepared to offer you a gift," continued. "More wealth than you can imagine. A beautiful estate on any planet you choose. All you have to do is leave. Take your children back to Earth. Let the princess return to her proper place." Looked at the old advisor for a long moment. Then he smiled. "My proper place is beside my wife and children. No amount of money can buy that." Smile disappeared. His eyes turned hard and dangerous. "You will regret this decision, human." "Maybe," said, "but I will not regret staying with my family." Left without another word. Stood at the window and looked out at the alien sky. He knew he had just made a powerful enemy, but he also knew that some things were worth fighting for. His family was worth fighting for. The next morning, news arrived that changed everything. The Collective's fleet was bigger than anyone thought. The Empire could not defeat them alone. Emperor needed Earth's help, and that meant he needed to publicly accept his human son-in-law. The real test was about to begin. The Earth delegation arrived on a morning when storm clouds covered the twin suns. Stood on the landing platform beside the royal family, watching the human ships descend through the clouds. The nobles had expected small, primitive vessels. What they saw made them go quiet with surprise. Earth had sent 12 warships. They were not elegant like ships. They were ugly and brutal, covered in thick armor and heavy weapons. They looked like machines built for one purpose only: destruction. The lead ship landed first. Its door opened and Admiral stepped out. Smiled, had been his commanding officer years ago. She was a short woman with hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She walked like someone who had seen 100 battles and won them all. "Park," she said, nodding to him. "You look well. Marriage agrees with you." "Admiral," he replied, "thank you for coming." Looked at the royal family standing behind him. Her eyes moved over Emperor and Empress without fear. Most people trembled before the Emperor, simply gave him a polite nod, like he was any other leader she had met. "Your Majesty," she said, "Earth is prepared to discuss an alliance. Shall we begin?" The negotiations took place in the Grand Council chamber. The generals expected to lead the talks. They planned to explain things slowly to the primitive humans, who surely could not understand complex military strategy. They were very wrong. Admiral had studied the collective for months. She knew their ship designs, their attack patterns, their weaknesses. When the generals presented their battle plans, she pointed out 3 critical flaws in the first 5 minutes. "Your formation leaves your supply lines exposed," she said, drawing on the holographic map. "That will cut you here, here, and here. You will run out of fuel within 6 hours." The generals sputtered with anger. How dare this human correct them? But Emperor raised his hand for silence. "Continue, Admiral." Presented Earth's counter-proposal. It was aggressive, unconventional, and slightly insane by standards. It involved using human ships as bait to draw them into a trap, then hitting them from multiple directions at once. "This is madness," one general said. "Your pilots would be flying into certain death." His expression did not change. "Our pilots volunteer for these missions. Humans are not afraid to die for what matters. We simply make sure our deaths mean something." The room went quiet. They were beginning to understand something important about their new allies. Humans were not powerful because they were strong or fast or lived long lives. Humans were powerful because they simply refused to give up. While the adults talked strategy, faced her own battle. A group of young nobles had cornered her in a garden. There were 4 of them, all older and bigger than her. Their leader was a boy named, whose father was an important general. Half-breed sneered. "You think you belong here. You are nothing but a mistake. Your mother should have drowned you at birth." His hands shook. She could feel her power rising inside her. It would be so easy to use her telekinesis and throw them all across the garden. She was stronger than they knew. But she remembered what her father had taught her. "Real strength is not about power," he had said. "It is about choosing how to use it." Instead of using her mind powers, stepped forward and grabbed his arm. She twisted her body the way her father had shown her. One moment was standing. The next moment he was lying on his back, gasping for air. The other noble children stared in shock. "A human fighting trick," said calmly. "My father taught me. Do you want to learn too?" She offered her hand to help up. He looked at her with confusion and something that might have been respect. After a moment, he took her hand. That evening, Emperor called to his private chamber. The human walked through the dark halls alone. He did not know what the Emperor wanted. Perhaps this was a trap. Perhaps had finally convinced to get rid of him. But when he entered the chamber, he found only an old alien sitting by a window, looking out at the stars. "Sit," said. For a long time, neither of them spoke, then asked a question. "Why did you stay with my daughter?" Thought carefully before answering. "Because I love her." "That is not what I mean." Turned to look at him. "You know that live for 500 years. You know that will still be young when you are old and dying. You know that she will spend centuries without you after you are gone. Why would you choose such a short time together?" looked at the stars outside the window. He thought about and Juno. He thought about all the moments they had shared, the laughter, the tears, the quiet mornings, and the long nights. Because love is not about time, he said finally. I would rather have 50 years with than an eternity without her. Every moment with my family is precious because I know it will not last forever. That is what makes it valuable. Was silent for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Strange creatures, you humans. You live such short lives, yet you feel so deeply. Perhaps that is why my daughter chose you. Perhaps that is why your species has survived so long against the darkness of space. He stood and walked to the door. The alliance will be signed tomorrow. You will stand beside my daughter as her husband, officially recognized by the Empire. Stood and bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Paused at the door. Thank me by keeping my daughter in safe. That is all I ask. Then he was gone. Stayed in the chamber for a while looking at the stars. Tomorrow everything would change. The alliance would be official. His family would be accepted. But he knew the danger was not over. They were coming, and somewhere in the palace was still plotting. The battle for the future was just beginning. What did not know was that had already discovered something terrible. While searching through old records, she had found proof that had been communicating with the in secret. The High Advisor was a traitor. He was planning to destroy the alliance before it could save them all. And he would kill anyone who stood in his way, including the children who represented everything he hated. Ran through the palace halls, desperate to warn her family. But she was already too late. The shadows were moving, and the assassins had already arrived. The assassins came in the dark hours before dawn. They were warriors, creatures with skin and 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. They moved through the palace like ghosts, killing the guards silently before anyone could raise an alarm. Had given them the codes to bypass security. He had shown them the path to the royal quarters. He had told them exactly where to find the princess and her half-breed children. The first warning was a scream from the hallway outside their rooms. He was out of bed in an instant, years of military training taking over. He grabbed the only weapon nearby, a ceremonial sword that hung on the wall. It was meant for decoration, but it was sharp enough to kill. "Take the children," he shouted. "Go through the back passage." Did not argue. She ran to the children's room, where and Juno were already awake, frightened by the noise. She grabbed them both and headed for the secret door that led to the underground tunnels. Stayed behind. The bedroom door exploded inward. 3 assassins rushed through, their weapons raised. They expected an easy kill. The human was smaller than them, weaker, and armed with only a simple sword. This would take seconds. It did take seconds, but not the way they expected. Did not fight like he did not stand tall and trade blows with honor. He fought like a human soldier who had survived impossible odds too many times to count. He threw a chair at the first assassin's face. While the creature stumbled, he ducked under its arms and drove his sword into its throat. Before the body hit the ground, he was already moving. The second assassin swung all 4 arms at once, dropped flat to the floor, letting the weapons pass over him, then slashed at the creature's legs. It fell screaming, and he finished it with a quick strike. The third assassin was smarter. It hung back, studying him. "You are more dangerous than we were told, human." Was breathing hard. Blood ran down his arm from a cut he had not noticed. "Your boss should have done better research." The assassin attacked. This one was faster, more skilled. Its 4 blades wove a deadly pattern that pushed back step by step. He blocked, dodged, and retreated, but he was losing ground. Then he saw his chance. The assassin stepped on a puddle of blood from its dead friends. Its foot slipped for just a moment. Threw his sword at its face, forcing it to block. While its arms were busy, he grabbed a heavy lamp from a table and smashed it across the creature's skull. The assassin dropped, picked up his sword, and ran after his family. In the tunnels below the palace led the children through darkness, held her mother's hand tightly. Little Juno clung to her back, his face buried in her silver hair. "Mommy, I'm scared," Juno whispered. "I know, baby, but we have to be brave. Can you be brave for me?" Juno nodded against her shoulder. They turned a corner and stopped. An assassin blocked the tunnel ahead. It had found another way down. Pushed the children behind her. She was a princess, trained in combat since childhood, but the assassin was already raising its weapon. Then stepped forward. Something was happening inside her. All her life she had controlled her power, kept it small and hidden. Now, with her mother and brother in danger, she could not hold back anymore. The power exploded out of her. It was telekinesis, but it was more than that. It was raw emotion, pure protective fury, focused through her mind like light through a lens. The energy lifted the assassin off the ground and threw it down the tunnel so hard that it crashed through a stone wall. Stared at her daughter in shock. Telekinesis was precise and controlled. This was something different. This was something human, wild, emotional, unstoppable. She breathed. His legs gave out. Using so much power had exhausted her, caught her before she fell. Found them moments later. He saw the destroyed wall and his daughter's pale face and understood immediately. "Is she okay?" "She saved us," said. "She saved us all." They kept moving. Behind them, alarms finally began to sound throughout the palace. Emperor received the news of the attack while still in his night clothes. His reaction was terrifying in its calmness. "Find," he said quietly, "bring him to me." The guards found the High Advisor trying to escape through a secret exit. They dragged him to the throne room in chains. Did not yell. He did not threaten. He simply looked at the alien who had served him for 300 years and asked one question. "Why?" Raised his chin defiantly. "To save the Empire. These humans will corrupt us. Their blood will weaken our race. I would rather see the win than watch the people become mongrels." Drew his sword. "You would sacrifice billions of lives for your pride." "It is not pride, it is purity." The Emperor's blade moved faster than anyone could see. His head fell to the floor. "There is no purity in betrayal," said. "There is only death." But the damage was done. The fleet, guided by information had provided, emerged from hyperspace 3 days earlier than expected. They appeared in the sky above Prime like a swarm of dark stars. The defense fleet scrambled to meet them, but they were outnumbered 2-1. Their elegant ships fought bravely, but slowly they were pushed back toward the planet. Then Earth's fleet arrived. Admiral had ignored the planned timetable and pushed her ships to maximum speed when she received word of the attack. 12 human warships dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the formation. "All ships weapons-free," ordered. "Show them what humans can do." The battle was brutal. Ships fought with grace and precision. Human ships fought with fury and desperation. Where tried to disable enemy vessels, humans aimed to destroy completely. Where maintained formation, humans scattered and regrouped in patterns they could not predict. One human destroyer, its engines destroyed and its crew mostly dead, aimed itself at a battleship and accelerated. The collision destroyed both vessels but opened a hole in the line. The commander had never seen anything like it. His species fought for conquest, they fought for honor, but these humans, they fought like they had nothing to lose. They fought like every moment mattered because they knew their lives were short. They fought like people protecting their homes. The fleet retreated. On the surface of Prime, the Park family watched the enemy ships flee into the darkness, stood between her parents, still weak but alive. Juno sat on his father's shoulders, pointing at the lights in the sky. "Did we win, Daddy?" Watched the last ships disappear. He knew this was not the end. They would return with a bigger fleet, more weapons, more hate. But today they had survived. Today, humans and had fought together and won. "We won today," he told his son, "and tomorrow we will fight again if we have to." Took his hand, leaned against his side, and together they watched the dawn break over a world that would never be the same. The real war was coming, but now they would face it together. Human and, united by blood and love, 1 month passed after the first battle. 1 month of preparation, training, and waiting for the storm that everyone knew was coming. The collective had lost their advance fleet, but their main armada was still coming. Intelligence reports said it was 3 times larger than what had attacked before. When it arrived, it would be the largest battle the galaxy had ever seen. Human and forces worked together like never before. Engineers from both species shared technology and ideas. Human ships were fitted with shields. Weapons were modified with human targeting systems. Soldiers trained side by side, learning each other's strengths. Stood at the center of it all. He was not a general or an admiral, but he had become something just as important, a bridge between 2 worlds. When officers did not understand why humans did things a certain way, explained. When human soldiers felt overwhelmed by alien customs, helped them adjust. His title was simple, advisor, but everyone knew he was much more than that. One night, Emperor found his grandson Juno alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. "Why are you not sleeping, little one?" asked. Juno turned around. His eyes were worried. "Grandfather, are the bad aliens coming back?" Knelt down to be at the boy's level. For the first time in centuries, he did not feel like an emperor. He felt like a grandfather trying to comfort a scared child. "Yes," he said honestly, "they are coming back." "Is everyone scared?" Thought about lying. He thought about telling the boy that adults were never afraid, that everything would be fine. But he remembered what had taught him about humans. They did not hide from hard truths. They faced them. "Yes," he admitted, "I'm scared too." Juno looked surprised. "But you are the emperor. You are not supposed to be scared." "Everyone gets scared sometimes, even emperors." Juno was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took his grandfather's large hand in his small one. "Daddy says that being brave is not about not being scared. Being brave is about being scared but still protecting the people you love." Felt something shift inside his ancient heart. For 300 years he had ruled with strength and power. He had never let anyone see his weakness. But now, holding his grandson's hand under the stars, he understood something new. True strength was not about being invincible. It was about being vulnerable with the people you loved. "Your father is a wise man," said. "He is the best daddy," Juno agreed, "even if he is just a human." Laughed. It was a strange sound, rusty from lack of use. Just a human. Perhaps that is what makes him special. The next day, Empress called the court together. She had an announcement to make. The nobles gathered in the great hall, whispering among themselves. Many still did not accept the human prince or his children. They expected the Empress to announce some minor matter, something safe and traditional. They were wrong. Stood before the throne, her back straight and her voice strong. "For too long, we have believed that blood must remain pure. We have looked down on other species as inferior. We have treated anyone different from us as less worthy of respect." The nobles stirred uneasily. This was not what they expected. "I spent 12 years mourning a daughter who was still alive," continued. "I refused to accept her choices because of pride, because of tradition, because I believed that a human could never be worthy of our family." She looked at who stood with, and the children near the front of the crowd. "I was wrong." The hall went completely silent. "Today I declare that Princess and Prince Juno are full heirs to the throne. Their human blood does not make them lesser. It makes them stronger. They carry the best of 2 worlds within them." An old noble stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is madness. The bloodline must remain pure, tradition demands. Tradition demanded that I abandon my daughter, interrupted. Tradition demanded that I reject I followed tradition, and it brought me nothing but regret and pain. She raised her chin. I will not make that mistake again. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to leave this court and never return. No one moved, no one spoke. Smiled a cold smile. I thought not. The armada arrived 3 days later. The sky above Prime turned dark with enemy ships, thousands of them, filling the space between stars like a plague of locusts. It was the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever witnessed. The combined human fleet rose to meet them. Admiral commanded from her flagship. Emperor commanded from his royal battleship. Between them, ships of both species formed a wall of steel and fire. All forces, this is Admiral. The enemy wants to destroy everything we have built together. They think we are weak because we are different. They think our alliance will crumble when the battle gets hard. Her voice was calm and steady. Let us show them how wrong they are. The battle began. It was chaos. It was destruction. It was terrible and beautiful at the same time. Piloted a new kind of ship, a hybrid vessel with a human crew and technology. His squadron flew patterns that no commander could predict, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Fought beside her husband, just as she had fought beside him 12 years ago on Earth. They moved together like two parts of one machine, covering each other, protecting each other, trusting each other completely. The command ship was massive, the size of a small moon. Its shield seemed unbreakable, but saw something others missed, a tiny gap where two shield generators overlapped imperfectly. All hybrid squadrons follow me, he ordered. We are going through. 12 ships dove toward the gap. Weapons filled the space around them with fire. Ships exploded. Pilots died, but enough made it through. They hit the command ship's weak points together. Human missiles and energy weapons combined into something devastating. The shields flickered. Then they fell. The command ship began to break apart. Without their command ship, the fleet lost coordination. Their formations scattered. Their attacks became desperate and unfocused. The Allied fleet pressed forward, turning retreat into rout. By sunset, it was over. The armada was destroyed. The survivors fled into deep space, their invasion shattered. The galaxy was safe. 10 years passed. Stood before the first class of the Joint Human Academy. She was no longer a frightened little girl. She was a young woman, strong and confident, with her mother's silver skin and her father's warm eyes. Behind her stood cadets from both species. Some were pure human, and some, like her, were hybrids who carried the blood of two worlds. My grandmother once asked if we were truly her, said, her voice carrying across the assembly hall. She asked because we looked different, because our blood was mixed, because we did not fit into the neat categories she had always known. She smiled, remembering that moment in the throne room so many years ago. Today, I ask all of you, does it matter what blood runs in our veins when we share the same courage? Does it matter what planet we were born on when we fight for the same hopes? Does it matter what species we call our own when we look up at the same stars? In the audience, Park watched his daughter speak. His hair was now, and lines marked his face, but his eyes still held the same warmth they had always had. Sat beside him, unchanged by time. She would live for centuries more after he was gone, but neither of them thought about that. They thought only about this moment, this day, this achievement their family had made possible. Juno sat with his grandparents. He was a young man now, tall and handsome, preparing to join the academy himself. Empress held his hand, just as he had once held hers when he was small. Emperor watched his granddaughter with pride that he no longer tried to hide. The cold emperor who had once dismissed humans as primitive creatures was gone. In his place was a grandfather who had learned that love knew no boundaries. finished her speech to thunderous applause. As she stepped down from the stage, her father was waiting for her. "I am proud of you," said simply. Hugged him tight. "I learned from the best." That night the family gathered for dinner. 3 generations around one table, the emperor and empress, the princess and her human husband, and the children who had changed everything. Outside the windows, ships from a dozen different species passed through the sky. The alliance had grown. The galaxy was more connected than ever before, and it had all started with a princess who fell in love with a human pilot. "Tell us the story again, Daddy," Juno said. "Tell us how you met Mom." Laughed, "You have heard that story 100 times. "We want to hear it again," said, "please." Smiled and took her husband's hand, leaned back in his chair with a rare expression of contentment, watched her with eyes full of love. Looked around the table at his family, human and old and young, different in so many ways but united by something that transcended blood and tradition and time. "All right," he said. "It started on a dark night on Earth when a princess needed help." And outside the windows, the stars shone bright with promise. The end.